portion, so hang in there with us. This Corps of Cadets, your reputation has preceded you to be mature, respectful men, so I anticipate that's going to be on display here today. But first we're going to tell you a little bit more about ourselves.
All right, my name is Lisa Sutherland, and I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia. And I work at Family Recovery, and we are an outpatient counseling facility. So it's kind of what you see on TV. There's people that come in our office, they sit, sometimes lay down on the couch, take off their shoes, and want to talk about their feelings. But one of the interesting things that we get to do in our work is we work with a lot of younger people, so 18 to 35-year-olds, and they've gotten in trouble for some of their sexual behavior. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. She's going to introduce herself.
My name is Christy Merritt. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Georgia. I've been working at Family Recovery for about 10 years now. I got my master's degree in social work and my master's degree in criminology from Florida State University, go Noles. And I live with my husband in the North Georgia mountains here, who I think you guys have met.
All right, so one of the things that we have our clients tell us often is, I wish that somebody would have given me a warning about how I could get in trouble online, or when it comes to my sexual behavior at all. And so what we're doing here today is we just want to bring some awareness to the reasons that you can get in trouble online and how that can impact your health. And so we're going to kind of break it down for you, give you a little bit of science, so y'all hang in there with us, okay?
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about pornography, talk about porn, not view it. Y'all pay attention anyway, though.
All right, so what is pornography? We do not want you to give us an answer. You can probably come up with something yourself. But it is, if you think about it, a little harder to come up with a definition of what pornography is. But in our practice, when we talk about pornography, we're talking about any sexually explicit material that you're using for a sexual purpose or for sexual gratification. And so when it comes to pornography, there's a lot of questions, and there hasn't always been a lot of talk and answers given. But recently, there's been a lot more research, so we're going to talk about that.
So 20 years ago, 25 years ago, pornography did not look like it does now. It was not online, it wasn't free, and it wasn't easily accessible. So there wasn't the damage that we're seeing now, and there wasn't a lot of research about it. So kind of like before in the 70s and the 80s, and everyone smoked cigarettes, and then research came out and says, hey, that kills you, and so most of us stopped smoking because we didn't want to die. Now we are learning that there is some damage that's being caused by how we're consuming pornography today, because it is free, and it is easily accessible, and it is abundant. And those three things prey on our ability to control our behavior.
All right, so you probably have questions about pornography, like how much is too much? Is it illegal? Is it immoral? How can I really be affected by pornography? And we can't really answer all of that today, but we are going to go through some of the effects of pornography use. I want y'all to kind of listen and see some of the stuff we're going to talk about. All right, so there's been a lot of media attention related to pornography. The Washington Post and Time recently released articles, and the Washington Post says, is porn immoral? It doesn't matter, it's a public health crisis. And then the Time article is titled, Why Young Men Who Grew Up with Internet Porn Are Becoming Advocates of Turning It Off. And there's another famous advocate that's recently come on the scene. It's Terry Crews. He is an athlete and actor, and he recently released a series of Facebook confessional videos about his struggle with pornography and kind of how it affected him and it became an addiction. So y'all listen up. We're going to play 2 clips just from his Facebook videos. Maybe we might. Hey. Should I point this place? I think I should point other place.
Just stand closer.
You've wandered too far.
The thing, it became a thing where I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody. It was a thing that it was my secret. Nobody knew, and that allowed it to grow. And it got bad. And when I say bad, some people deny it. They say, hey man, you can't really be addicted to pornography. There's no way. But I'm gonna tell you something. If day turns into night and you are still watching, you probably got a problem. And that was me.
All right, there's another one.
One more, listen up.
Now, some of you may not agree. Please tell me what you think. But my issue was, and is, with pornography, is that it changes the way you think about people. People become objects. People become, body parts. They become things to be used rather than people to be loved. And it really, you start to change the way you see people, and you start to use people. You start to feel like, you're the man and they're just, whatever. And I had to change my thinking. I had to change what I believed. And once I knew, and once I was aware of what it was doing to me, it changed me.
All right, so those are kind of powerful words from Terry Crews there. And one of the things that I think that I want to pull from that is the fact that he was pretty surprised that it became an addiction. Like, he kind of admits, I was just looking at porn and I didn't really think it could be a problem, and then all of a sudden one day it was a major issue for him, and he realized, I'm addicted to this. Not only am I addicted, but it's affecting my relationships, it's affecting how I view people. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about how that addiction actually happens. So this is the science part that Lisa was talking about earlier. Explain a little bit more about what's happening in the brain and how that even happens.
First, we're going to give you some statistics, so don't be too bored. These are pretty interesting. This just further asserts what Terry Crews is sharing in the video about how fast pornography is growing and the dangers of the consumption.
Okay, so in 2009, Michael Leahy, who wrote Porn Nation, he's also a correspondent with the Washington Post, he did a survey of 30,000 university students. Found out that half of the guys and a third of the girls viewed porn before they were 12 years old. So that is pretty significant and is probably younger than most of the core in here. So, more concerning though, in 2010, which at this point was almost 10 years ago, they did a study of what was in these pornographic scenes and realized that 88% contained physical aggression, half verbal aggression, name calling, that sort of thing, and the perpetrators were male and the victims were female. Moving forward, only half of porn users, people that would admit that they view pornography, believe that sexual acts that are forced or painful are always wrong, and only 44% thought that someone being depicted in a demeaning way is always wrong. So here you've got half of people that think that pain and sex is something that is just fine to go together. This one is really interesting. We kind of just put this in here because it's an interesting stat, which is teens and young adults between 13 and 24 believe that not recycling is worse than viewing porn. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Sure, Save the Earth is great, that's fine, be green. But there's some stuff going on with pornography that can be really concerning, but we don't have that information. We're not being fed that research, and so we don't understand what the damage can be. And finally, about half of daily porn users say that porn featuring teens is wrong. So I want you to think about that, math it out. 46% of daily porn users think that teenagers in pornography is okay. And they're not talking about 18 and 19-year-olds. They're talking about people under the age of consent, and that it's fine to be in porn. So what you've got is people viewing porn younger, people viewing pornography and seeing that it's aggression, being okay with that aggression, and then once they become a compulsive user where they're using porn daily, even the idea of viewing something illegal starts to not be a big deal to them.
All right, so there are kind of two main areas of the effects that we're going to look at today. The psychological effects and then the physical effects. And the psychological is the brain. So we've got a brain video that we're going to show in a minute.
And addiction starts in the brain, so that's why we want to start this out. So I want you guys to pay attention to this video. There's going to be stick figures talking to you about sex, so listen up.
The person, but with the current pornography epidemic, as some call it, one has to wonder how exactly this may affect our desires and perception of sexuality. Moreover, how does it affect our sex lives? Pornography constitutes about 25% of all search engine requests and is the fourth most common reason people give for going on the internet. And while it may seem to simply facilitate an instinctual sexual response linked to millions of years of evolution, the truth is, pornography has dynamically changed over time, ultimately molding our tastes and desires. The not-so-shocking truth is that pornography has profound consequences for the brain and acts in many ways like a drug. With prolonged exposure, your tolerance is increased, and many often find themselves addicted. Though it's not a physical substance, it leads to the same general loss of control, the compulsiveness to seek out the activity despite negative consequences, and withdrawal when it goes away, much like that of gambling or running, for example. The issue is that continued exposure can cause long-term or even lifelong neuroplastic change in the brain. Dopamine is released as a reward whenever we accomplish something, whether it be eating to sustain life or sexual activity to produce future life. And this dopamine consolidates neural connections in order to drive us to perform the same activity in the future. In other words, it alters and forms the brain cells to motivate certain actions. It rewires your brain. The National Institutes of Health measured drug addictiveness by testing rats. The rat is trained to press a button in order to get a drug, and the harder it works indicates how addictive the substance is. It turns out that the more addictive a drug is, the more dopamine we see released. And while there is unfortunately no rat porn that we can give to them, we do know that dopamine is also released during sexual excitement, which pornography plays right into. The more time you spend doing it, the more dopamine gets released, which reinforces the behavior and makes you not only desire it in the future, but require it. And as you begin to imagine these images away from the computer or while having sex, they become reinforced. Furthermore, each orgasm releases even more dopamine, which consolidates the connections made during the session. It's a feedback loop that becomes harder to escape. And just like a drug, your tolerance for visual stimulation has now compounded, making it more difficult to be turned on by reality. Pornography addiction can often lead to finding your mate less attractive. The good news is, it doesn't have to be permanent. Usually when people understand the mechanism and realize it's affecting their relationships, they can stop. The brain is often described as a use it or lose it system because the neural connections you stimulate grow stronger and desire to be activated, while the ones you ignore become weakened. Much like your muscles, which, if sitting still all day, itch for activity, but after prolonged non-use, they become complacent. Luckily, because of this use it or lose it brain, the same neuroplastic system that proliferates these habits can also be used to acquire healthier ones.
All right, that was a lot of information. Y'all did good hanging in there. All right, we're going to pull out 2 key points from the video. So they mentioned the sexual compulsivity cycle, or the cycle of addiction, and then
So we'll
and neuroplastic brain change.
We're going to jump into the sexual compulsivity cycle since the slides want us to. So over here you've got the emotional and physical triggers. So this is when you are feeling bad and you want to feel better. We are kind of wired as people to kind of want to minimize our pain and maximize our pleasure. And so when we start to have a bad day and we start to not feel so good, we want to change that, which leads to the desire or the craving where we think, when was the last time I felt pleasure? And then you start to remember what that was and you start to crave that action, which is the next part of this wheel. So that consumption actually happens, and in this case that would be actually consuming the pornography or having sex if it's actually a sexual addiction. And then after that, you get that dopamine dump that the video was talking about. So this is the 2 seconds of greatness that you get from this entire cycle, and that's what you were after. But it doesn't last very long. And afterwards, there's often guilt and shame kind of associated with it, because most of the time, once you've gotten onto this cycle, this is like your 1,000th or 7,000th loop through this. You told yourself you weren't going to do it again. You realize that it's affecting your relationships, but here you are. So after that, there's this emptiness and withdrawal, which makes you feel crappy, which leads right back around to the emotional trigger. And this is a cycle that we see really often in the line of work that we do. People get caught in this, and once this is something, and you can kind of notice it kind of looks like chains, once this is something that takes a hold, it's really, really hard to break on your own. Lisa's going to tell you a little bit more about the neuroplastic brain change.
All right, so neuroplastic brain change is just a really fancy way of saying rewiring of your brain. And so you're wondering why there's a picture of furries up here. It's kind of an example of what can happen when your brain is rewired to be sexually aroused to something that it shouldn't be. So it's kind of funny to think about people who are sexually aroused to furries, but not so funny to think about people that are sexually aroused to kids. So we're just going to tell you just a brief story of a client that we currently have. He is 24 years old, and he's been in our program for a while, and he kind of shared a little bit about what he thinks happened to his brain and to his body. So he started viewing at pornography when he was about 16, and then he started to see that he was stuck in that cycle of addiction that we just talked about. So he was craving the dopamine, acting out, then feeling really guilty, which caused him to want to feel better, and so he started using more, and he was using more and more pornography. And our brains are actually kind of cool. We like new things, so we like it when we go to a new place, when we try a new food, when we smell a new thing. We like new porn too. And so he found something online that was a preteen girl, and he thought that was really new and exciting, great. And then the GBI came and was knocking on his door. And so he ended up getting arrested and got in trouble and came to see us. So he says that what he felt like, he was kind of rewiring his brain and started doing things that he wouldn't normally have viewed. And so that's a little bit how neuroplastic brain change works, which kind of leads us to some of the physical effects.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about the physical effects, and this actually might be something that you guys have heard of, because it's one of the more stunning pieces of research regarding pornography use right now. There has been a lot of statistics that suggest a recent correlation between erectile dysfunction and overconsumption of pornography. So back in 1992, before probably most of you guys were born, the idea of somebody under 40 having erectile dysfunction was sort of rare. So you see that the National Institute of Health estimated it to be about 5%. In 2013, 26% of adult men were seeking help for erectile dysfunction under 40. In 2014, they did a study with the military, a third of them under 40. And in 2012, over in Switzerland, so it's not just an American issue, found it even younger, that a third of men between 18 and 25 were suffering from this issue. And so the doctors got together and were like, what is happening here? And they started to realize, wait a minute, there seems to be a really strong correlation between people that are viewing internet pornography and becoming compulsive about it and losing the ability to be turned on by reality, like the video was saying. So I think that that's something that probably is interesting and should be relatively concerning to you guys. And this is something that I want you guys to remember from this talk. Now, we've talked a lot about porn. We're going to change gears in a minute, but I hope that you guys kind of remember some of the psychological and physical effects that we talked about. But right now, we're going to kind of change gears and talk a little bit more about how you can get in trouble online, some of the legal ramifications of being on the internet, and how you can also be a victim.
All right, so we're going to switch and we're going to talk a little bit about catfishing. Sure, all of you know what catfishing is. You've probably heard the term internet troll. And we are going to kind of talk a little bit about the bad kind of catfishing.
All right, y'all are doing good. Hang in there.
All right, so definition. A catfisher is a person who poses as someone else online to exploit another person. And it's not just sexual exploitation, it could be financial exploitation too. And we're going to go over a couple of statistics because it's pretty common in this area. All right, so in 2018, just last year, 43% of men admitted that they had been catfished at some point in their life. And currently, there are 83 million Facebook accounts that are fake. And the primary Facebook accounts that are fake are female, and so the males are primarily being targeted. And so you're probably thinking, like, why does this matter? Because whether or not you know it, you've probably encountered a fake Facebook account. Statistically, it's 1 in 27. So if you have more than 27 friends, you could do the math on how many are probably fake that you're encountering daily.
And I know you guys are thinking, like, y'all, I'm a teenager, I'm savvy enough to know whether or not somebody is trying to exploit me online. So, like, this kind of an image right here, right, it's pretty obvious. I hope you guys don't get in this man. Or talk to this guy who's pretty creepy, because, like, this isn't a clown, y'all, this is just a guy dressed in a way that's creepy. So this is obvious, this is pretty obvious, but this, maybe not so much, right? She's saying, right, hey, send me a pic, she wants to see a picture of you in the shower, you're alone, and that seems like a really good idea. But what you don't realize is that she's a 52-year-old man with a catalog of naked 15-year-old boy pictures on his computer. and where you may not care that an old guy has a picture of you, there are some concerning elements to that, and we're going to talk to you about sextortion.
All right, so why does that even matter? Well, it may matter because of sextortion. And what that looks like around us is that you're chatting with somebody online and they are requesting a photo or for you to engage in some acts, and then they essentially own you at that point. And so here, we named him Predator Pete, by the way. So here are the ways that Predator Pete owns you. All right, he can sell your images or videos to other predators to use it for their sexual gratification or for financial gratification. Y'all, there's groups of people out there that have cataloged thousands and thousands of images, and they just trade them back and forth with each other. All right, he could threaten to share it with your family or friends if you do not comply with more requests. And so this looks like more pictures, more extreme pictures, acts, money, or possibly meeting up. And this is probably the most common way that we see this play out. And then finally, he could kidnap you and sell you into sex trafficking. And you think like, yes, in the North Georgia area, we are a corridor for sex trafficking, and it's not just females, it's males too. So we're going to give you a couple of ways to tell if a social media profile is fake news.
I think there's about 4 of these, so y'all pay attention.
All right, so social media accounts that are fake tend to have more friends than those that are not fake, actually 6 times more. So if you notice that one of your friends has 6,000 friends, they're probably fake. You don't know 6,000 people. They have a lack of people or friends tagged in photos. If they have really cool photos, but no one is tagged in them, that's probably a red flag. And they have a really cool or exotic sounding job. So they're skydive, they're a model, they have a bunch of friends, that's a warning. And then finally, they may be sharing a traumatic event, like they have cancer, they're a victim of some trauma, have a death in the family, an immigration need. This is like the, I lost my puppy in the park, can you come help me, but just online.
So we're going to give you guys a couple of ways that you can kind of protect yourself, other than just staying vigilant, which is a good idea. There's 3. So the first one is just to clean out your followers and friends list every couple of months. Remove people you don't know. That friend of a friend of a friend that you may have met at a party sometime, that ends up not being so safe. So if you know the people, that's cool. Social media is a great way to connect, and it's an awesome tool. But it can be dangerous if we leave a whole bunch of people on there that we don't know. Secondly, don't accept friend requests or chat through online gaming platforms. Y'all, these RPG games, these FPS games, they're super awesome. Talk with the people you know on there. Don't talk with the people you don't know on there. There are so many guys in our program right now,
Fortnite, y'all, Fortnite,
that have gotten themselves in trouble on here. Because what happens is, they end up talking to somebody and say, hey, do you want to meet up? We can talk about gaming. They get your trust, and then the conversation turns sexual, but you feel like it's okay because it's kind of on a game and they don't really know you anyway. And you can get kind of lured in that way. So it can be kind of dangerous. And finally, don't go here with somebody that you meet online. In fact, don't really go anywhere with someone you meet online. Y'all, this should creep you out, but the Clown Motel is a real place. That was scary when I found that. So don't go here or anywhere else with somebody that you meet online. This should be pretty common sense information here. Finally, though,
just remember that your feelings aren't facts. So while it feels good that this hot girl is giving you some attention online, it's probably not. It's Predator Pete, and really, it's not factual. All right, so y'all submitted some questions, and we had a chance to go through some of them. There were some really, really good questions, y'all. But some of them didn't quite make the cut. We picked some that were kind of the majority consensus, and we hope that we can answer the bulk of your questions. All right, so here we go.
First one.
Is it really child porn if you were a child too?
Yes. Yes, it is. So,
Good question.
this was a good question, though. There is a difference between sexually deviant and illegal. So no, it's not sexually deviant for you as a teenage boy to be aroused by a teenage girl. That's completely normal. But you don't get to view her online, because that's completely illegal. So she's not able to consent to her image or her body being used online. And so if you're viewing that, you could still go to jail. So it might be normal, but it is not legal, so you could still get in trouble. So yes. So a lot of you also asked, how do we know if pornography is a problem for me?
All right, so like we mentioned earlier, there's the sexual compulsivity cycle, the cycle of addiction. A couple of things to remember here. If you're giving up something that you love or you really enjoy to find the time to be alone with your computer, like you don't want to go to the movies with your friends, you don't want to play basketball after school because you know that you'll have some alone time, that's a sign. Number two, you find that the only thing that you're thinking about is doing the act or engaging in some behavior, and that's kind of consuming your thoughts. You're constantly craving and desiring that dopamine. And then finally, maybe your friends or yourself, you notice some behavior changes. So you're more irritable or aggressive or angry, and you just can't figure out why. And then you realize it's usually when you've had to refrain from using. And so what Terry Crews said in the video is if it goes from day to night and you're still looking at pornography or thinking about it, that's when you've got a problem. All right, so if you do have a problem, what can you do to stop?
So there's a couple practical things. The first is create an external barrier for yourself. So do not take your phone to bed with you or to the bathroom with you. That's gross. The bathroom's gross, right? Don't do that. And this, all of your phones, not just the ones your TAC officers you know you have, but all of your devices. Make sure that you are being careful with that. Because like we talked about, the internet is with you when you are vulnerable, so when you're bored, and when you're hungry, and when you're lonely, and when you're aroused. And so if that is right there in front of your face and you know you have a problem, that's going to create a greater temptation. So make there be an external barrier. Don't take it to bed with you. Another one is find an accountability partner. So find somebody else that you trust, could be in the Corps, maybe back home, and tell them about it. Because that was one of the things that Terry Crews said that was the most powerful for him to be able to stop, was just stopping it being a secret and starting it being a conversation. So he kind of posted it to the whole entire world. You guys can post a Facebook confessional if you like, but probably it's going to be a little bit better if you find somebody that you trust, tell them what's going on, and have them help you stay accountable. And there's some accountability software also that can help facilitate that a little bit. And if you have a need for that or you're interested in that, we can give you more information after our presentation about what that looks like. And finally, just make sure that you're smart about when you're online. Don't cruise all around online, again, when you feel that you're extra vulnerable. If you've had a really, really bad day, that might not be the time to cuddle up with your cell phone. This one gets a whole slide, and we are almost done. You guys are being so good. This is important because this is the trouble that you can get into. This is the legal issues that can happen to you if you do not pay attention to what you are doing.
All right, so there are 5 that we're going to go over, and these are just 5. There's a whole bunch more. We've taken these from the OCGA code, which is the official law in the state of Georgia. And first one. Keep closer. All right, you have a sexual partner who is under the age of consent, which is 16 in the state of Georgia, and you engage in any kind of sexual activity, that's intercourse or touching. And a lot of you probably think, well, if it's my peer, I'm kind of protected because of the Romeo and Juliet law. And while, yes, that exists in the state of Georgia for peer sexual encounters, it could just mean that you get a misdemeanor instead of a felony, but you can still be on the sex offender registry, so it does not protect you. The bigger the age gap, the more trouble. All right, the next one is you send sexually explicit photos or videos of someone under the age of 18 to another person, including yourself. That is called child pornography. And you think, oh, it's my body, I can send it to my girlfriend if I want. You can't. If it gets out, someone else finds it, she sends it to someone else, you're distributing child pornography. All right, and then you engage in an online chatting or a webcam relationship with someone who's under the age of 18. Yes, you can get in trouble for your typed words, for your webcam conversations, through transcripts. Even if you are 17 or 18 years old yourself and you're asking for pictures or to engage in a sexual act. That is called enticing a minor for indecent purposes. And this one and one other one are probably the top charges that we have for online offenses in our practice.
Okay, so the next one is sexual battery. So this is if you engage in sexual acts with someone who is under the influence of alcohol and drugs, or is not awake or conscious. This is also called rape. You cannot do that. They must be awake and assenting to the sexual activity. They cannot be under the influence. They cannot be asleep. So sexual battery, also known as rape.
And just because someone doesn't say no, doesn't mean that they're saying yes.
And the final one that we see in our office the most, and probably the one that we've said here the most, is sexual exploitation of a minor. This is viewing anyone under the age of 18 engaging in a sexual act or a sexual pose on the internet. Every single picture, every single video you view is another charge. So that means that anytime you see more than one person, another charge. We have people that come into our office, and we have many right now, with thousands of counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. They are a sex offender in the state of Georgia. Lisa's going to talk in a second about what that means, but it can be pretty scary. And what happens too is we have people that viewed these images when they were 17, and the GBI didn't come knocking at their doors when they were 19 or 20. Because what happens is they view a tagged image, you don't know it's tagged. And then they do some research, they do some investigation, and they come and get you when they're ready. So this can be kind of a scary one. And she's going to talk to you a little bit about what it means to be a sex offender. Then we'll wrap up and go to mess.
All right, so you're probably thinking that a sex offender is the creepy mustache guy driving a white van. And yes, it is that sometimes. But it's also pastors, CEOs, military personnel, landscapers, factory workers. We have a whole gamut. So the Georgia Sex Offender Registry, your picture would be displayed online with your address and your charge name so that anybody could find it if they want. They can know where you live. You would have living and working restrictions. You can't just go find a job doing whatever you want to do. You can't find a career doing whatever you want to do. You can't live wherever you want to live. And you may not have internet access or very limited internet access. You are probably not going to allow to be around minors, even if it's your siblings, family members, or your own children one day. And then you could have a fancy ankle monitor bracelet on your leg that tracks your every move that you have to charge up against the wall. So those are just some of the implications of being a registered sex offender in the state of Georgia, and all of these charges can get you here.
Be careful with that. So finally, we just wanted to talk just a second about what you can do if you've actually been a victim. We've talked a lot about how to not be a victim or what you can do to actually be the perpetrator. But if you have been a victim of sexual assault or sexual violence, there's a couple of different ways that you can reach out. There's 3 numbers here, and I know you guys probably don't have anything to write them down. But the first one is the National Sexual Assault Hotline. So if you Google that, it'll come up. This is a really good resource to talk to somebody anonymously. So if you know that you've been through something and you're like, I'm not trying to tell anybody that I know, which is common, they can give you some resources and some counseling completely anonymously and can be a good way to be able to reach out and kind of start that healing process. Georgia Department of Family and Children's Services, they have a child abuse hotline. We like this resource because they're really good to be able to give you referrals in your own county. So if there are certain things that are happening that you need county resources, depending on where you live, they're a really good resource for that. But probably our favorite one on here is Rape Response. They are a local agency here in Gainesville, and they work with victims of sexual assault. Again, you can Google Rape Response Gainesville, and their information will come up. And they've got really good resources locally to deal with the legal advocacy as well as the counseling side of things.
And a lot of people think that their primary focus is female victims of sexual assault, but they actually have a teen male program too, so that's a really good resource. It's anonymous as much as it can be, and they'll help you if you want to press legal charges as well, and they're all free.
All right, you guys were amazing. These are our references, so you guys know that we didn't just make this up. And we have our little professional affiliations here, not that you really care, but this is what we do all day long. And after that is just some information about ourselves. You can go on our website, familyrecovery.com, give us a call. We're going to give our information out to your administration here. So if you have any other questions, I know we gave you a ton of information today, and we weren't able to deal with everything. So I'm sure you have some follow-up questions. You can get in touch with them, and we'd love to work with you further about all of it. I was right. Your reputation was on point. You guys were amazing. I know it was a hard topic to deal with, and so you guys were really respectful. Thank you so much for the administration and this Corps of Cadets for having us here today.